Alright y'all, welcome back to the channel and do some more slug testing. And we're out here on a really hot afternoon. I think it's about 100 degrees out here. It is hot, it is humid, there's storms rolling in this afternoon, but we've got some testing to do. And today's should be rather interesting to see what happens. Because these slugs are technically branded for another purpose, but I have a feeling that they're going to be pretty nice performers across the hunting scene as well. But we'll see how they do. So for the slugs we've got, I brought out some of these Fiocchi Defense Dynamics slugs. These are their Aero Slug. They have a few different in the lineup, but they are a 12 gauge, 2 3/4 inch, 1 ounce slug at 1560 feet per second. So very typical specs there, even though the box shows a little more of a defensive oriented marketing claim, which they would certainly work well in that type of scenario. But these specs all line up with your typical 2 3/4 inch rifled deer slug. And here's what one looks like out of the packaging. This sure does look like a ballistic product thug slug. I mean, you can see the nose of it there. It's got that little hollow point cavity. The sides kind of remind me of more of a Brennicky style slug, but they have that blue little gas cushion piece at the bottom down there. I believe that's legitimately just what these are, is a thug slug loaded in a Fiocchi shell. I've heard really good things about the thug slugs, but I have never tested any of them myself across the board in anybody's shell or loading, so I'm excited to see how these perform, because they could make for a fantastic deer hunting combination. For the shotgun we're running, I brought out the Remington 870. This is your regular run-of-the-mill 870, 24-inch smoothbore barrel. I've got a Hawk Vantage IR up on top, but we're running two different chokes that we're going to compare side by side today to see if they actually make any difference or not. Those being a factory improved cylinder and a Carlson's rifled choke. So obviously the improved cylinder is kind of the baseline, but we've also got this rifled choke to see if it actually improves our accuracy any. Sometimes it does, sometimes it doesn't, but you really have to find the right slug that's a true full bore diameter to get the best out of it from what we've seen so far. It's a 1 in 35 twist with a very short amount of rifling, so it makes a little difference, but not a massive amount, even though it is your typical rifled shotgun slug barrel type of twist rate. So we'll put these two chokes head to head with these and see what the difference is and if there's one better than the other or not. As for our test, we're going to shoot at two different distances, 50 yards and 100 yards. We'll shoot a 3-shot group from each choke at each distance, comparing the side-by-side results between an improved cylinder and a Carlson's rifle choke, and everything will be through the chronograph as well to get some energy numbers calculated off of that. So let's get you guys set up with a view. We'll start at 50 yards using our improved cylinder, then we'll switch to the rifled, move it out to 100, same thing, improved cylinder, then rifled. I will let the gun cool down for about 5 minutes in between each of our groups that we shoot, so hopefully we can mitigate a little bit of barrel heat. So enough talking, let's see what they'll do as far as accuracy goes through these two chokes. Okay, so at this point, after seeing what the results already are here, I decided we'll stick with a flush versus a rifle choke. However, when we step it out to our 100-yard target here momentarily, I decided to throw in the cylinder bore choke instead of the improved cylinder. I figured maybe they might prefer no choke at all, maybe something weird's going on with them. We'll try it and we'll see. It's already not a super scientific test, but now when we move to the 100-yard target, it will be cylinder bore flush stock choke versus the Carlson's rifle choke. Okay, so quick velocity run through before we look at our targets. We have a boss claim of 1560 out of these loads. However, we were not seeing that, but it is not uncommon to be 100 to 150 feet per second down from this 24-inch barrel. A lot of companies test them through 28 or 30-inch to get that number. So mid 1400s or so was pretty realistic for what I expected. So we had a high of 1489, a low of 1462. That gave us an average of 1480, so 80 feet per second below the boss claim. It's pretty realistic. That's a couple inches a barrel at least. With an extreme spread of 27 and a standard deviation of 8. So the velocities were very consistent across the board, but at an average of 1480, here is your muzzle energy for a 1-ounce slug at that number. 1 ounce is 437.5 grains. Obviously, even though these are a more defensive oriented type of loading based on the box marketing, that's plenty enough to take a deer or something with them as well, if we have the accuracy for it. So let's go look at our targets, because I don't think things were all that impressive over there. All right, so now let's take a look at our targets, because we got some pretty interesting results. We'll start at 50 yards. These top 3 bullet holes right here that kind of form this triangle, that was from our improved cylinder choke, and that is less than impressive to say the least. I mean, we're all over the place at 50 yards. Pretty much any halfway decent slug out of an improved cylinder choke in that gun usually stacks them pretty close, if not touching each other. But the bottom 3 shots, these 2 and this guy right on the top edge of the smaller target there, those 3 were the shots from our rifle choke. Definite improvement for sure, but still not all that great. We saw 2 that were close, and then we flung 1 high, and that trend kind of continued out to 100 yards as well. I think we've got some big inconsistencies happening here, and I'll go into more detail with that here in just a minute. But I had to get the tape measure out for the first group up here at the top with these 3 top shots from our improved cylinder choke. That's right about 7 3/4 inches. Not great, like we already can see. As far as the bottom ones from our rifle choke, that group gave us 4.72, so pretty much 4 3/4 inches for these 3 shots right here. That is still less than impressive, but a definite improvement for sure. But now moving to 100 yards, we continue a pretty similar trend, just scaled up a little bit. Now, I did decide to switch things up a little bit. I know it's not a 100% scientific test across the board at this point, really. But after seeing how bad it was at 50 yards with our improved cylinder, and that we saw some improvement with the rifle choke, I decided, well, let me screw in the cylinder bore choke into that gun and see what it does. Because clearly the improved cylinder was not going to work. I figured these are maybe a more defensive oriented type of loading. They might be more intended for cylinder bore guns. We'll try it and see what happens. And I don't think it really mattered all that much. The first group with the cylinder bore, I was aiming for the yellow dot up here at the top. We hit that top bullet hole and these 2 down here on the top of the bottom target. Clearly, some inconsistencies coming into play. And I should also mention, I checked after every shot. The choke was always tight. The magazine cap that holds the barrel tension was always tight. And I have witness marks on that, so I know if anything moves, it did not. And the scope is perfectly fine too. Nothing wrong with the scope, the rings, the rail, nothing like that. So it's just inconsistencies with the slug, which we'll talk more about that again here in just a second. Now for the bottom 2 shots, we were just shy of about 3 inches there out of that group for those 2 down here. I had to get the tape measure out and measure from the center of that top hole to the center of the bottom right hole. That's about 11 3/4 inches worth of spread right there. So not all that impressive. We tried, but we threw that one way up high, and I felt good about all of our trigger pulls. Just not what you want. But moving to our second group with the rifled choke, I was aiming at the red dot at the bottom, and we had those 2 that were just about touching, and this guy. So same characteristics. 2 that were close, 1 flyer off somewhere else. Same as what we saw up there at the top. But that is a much better group. And it's probably going to make a little bit of sense comparing it to our 50-yard spread. Considering it's right at 4.31 inches from our farthest 2 points across center to center on those bullet holes. Not horrible. A little over 4 inches is usable, but with the inconsistencies, I don't know that I would trust it as a hunting load. Because you may take another 4th shot in that group, and it may be 6 inches over and to the left. We just don't know. So the rifle choke is clearly the best option here with these out of the chokes we tested today. So that goes to show that you can get improvement with a rifle choke if you find the right slug. It's just the slug loading itself is not very consistent. And one of the main reasons why, I believe, has to do with these. These are the little press-in little base cushion pieces that go in the back of the Slug. I was finding these all over the range. Some of them were at 20 yards, some of them were at 50, some of them were at 80 yards. And this is not all of them. I found more of them across here as well. No major damage or anything to them, but considering that they were all flying out of the back of the Slugs, that probably had to do with some of our inconsistencies. The ones that held in the Slug longer were probably more reliable and were the better parts of our groups, but the ones that came out earlier were the flyers, most likely. All the Slugs were flying stable, it appeared, based on the holes they cut in the paper, but this can definitely have some sort of an effect if this is not supposed to happen. All right, well, what do we think about the results here? Not anything impressive. The best group of the day definitely came from the rifle choke, and we consistently saw improvement over the regular flush cylinder and improved cylinder chokes. So that is the better option. I've got a couple of these left. Maybe we should run them through a rifled barrel and see if that makes any kind of difference. It might help them, it might not. I don't know. Could be worth a try anyway. And maybe technically we're trying to push them to do something they're not intended for, but a good slug shouldn't really matter whether it's marketed as a defensive load or not. A good slug is a good slug, and at a good velocity, it should be able to hold its accuracy halfway decently. We've seen plenty of just regular old rifled slugs that way outshoot these in this same exact gun combination. So not exactly the results we were looking for, and I mean, they would absolutely work in those 5, 7, 10 yard up close and personal home defense scenarios like they're marketed for, but as a hunting load, close range with the right choke or something, possibly, but I don't know that I would trust them to be consistent enough for that. But if it's what you had, then you'd have to make it work, although it is less than ideal for sure. But let me know your thoughts about it down below. Is that about what you expected? Were you a little surprised one way or the other? Have you tested any of these Fiocchi Defense Dynamics Aero Slugs? And if so, what kind of results have you seen? Is this something you would ever use in a hunting scenario? Or if you're gonna run these, it would probably be up close and personal in a defensive situation. And what other stuff might you want to see with them? Like I just mentioned, maybe a rifled barrel with the handful of them I have left might be worth a try, but let me know your thoughts down below. But with that being said, I've got some more testing to get done for you guys, so I'm going to get back to it. As always, we have the channel Instagram as well as the mailbox where you can send stuff if you'd like. All the information will be in the description if you're interested in it, but I'm going to get back to it, so I'll see y'all in the next one.